The storms that shape us. Presented by Comfort Works.
Moore, Oklahoma, just a suburb of Oklahoma City area. You know, a great town, great city, full of great people. Normal people, just like you'd find in any other part of the country. But this place, no doubt about it, the last 30 years, they've gone through more violent weather than nearly any other place on the planet.
It's leveled a couple houses over here on 149th Street.
It was there. We didn't have any time to go anywhere else.
It got really quiet until it didn't.
I thought, there's no way our girls survived this.
This has turned into a massive tornado. As you can see these live pictures from Bob Mills, Sky News 9, just a humongous tornado here.
Gary, there's houses in the air here.
Oh my God, it's going.
It's crossing Western.
Oh my
It's about
God.
200 yards west of Western, Gary. This is a violent, deadly tornado, Gary. Please take cover if you're in the path of this thing.
That's your house?
That's my house.
It's like taking a blender, throwing a bunch of nails in it.
You need to understand what danger we're in.
I used to be terrified of tornadoes, of severe weather. When I was young, my parents would always do what some people still do is, oh, it's not going to hit here. And I think when I look back at that age and even where I am today, I still, and I've seen hundreds, I mean, I've covered hundreds of these, I've chased hundreds of tornadoes, is just the sheer magnitude of something that has so much energy. It's been turned loose and it's just on a ferocious line of wherever it's going to go.
Let's try it. Man, I want to see an updraft above it. I grew up in a sports family. We played baseball. My dad coached our teams. And I can remember being out at shortstop, you know, taking infield and the coach hitting me a ground ball and me looking, you know, off towards the west at a storm, an anvil, and the ball going between my legs, you know, and missing the ball and stuff like that. It's right on the road in front of us. Look at the condensate coming up. Oh, man. Power line's down. It started out as an adrenaline thing. I can tell you that right now. Windshield's broken. Windshield's broken.
That's got to be an F2 tornado right there. F2 tornado. There's debris flying in the air. I don't know what it hit. Gary?
Yes.
We are half a mile south of the tornado. We're getting wind gusts.
But I'm thinking that May 3rd, when May 3rd happened, and that F5, that terrible F5 that hit Moore and Oklahoma City and affected so many lives, at that point, we started realizing that what we're doing here might actually help to save lives.
Val and I complement each other very well. I mean, he has strengths that overcome my weaknesses, and maybe I have some strengths that overcome his weaknesses, and you know, together we're able to balance out the technicality of it all. My background being in engineering, everything is absolute. It has an answer, it has a reason, you know, and there's a process to come to something that works accurately and precisely, and weather is so unpredictable.
My job is to warn people and give them the most precise and accurate information on where the tornado is, the direction it's moving to, and where it's going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes from now. And if you're in that line of fire from where the tornado is, what are you going to do?
Tornadoes, tornado sirens, all the time. So honestly, we never really took it that serious.
Having been here all our lives, I mean, forever, you don't, it's not gonna hit you. Just thought, you know, oh, if it hits, it'll go somewhere else.
In about 1 minute. Right there. When I was chasing on the 19th, I was thinking, tomorrow's gonna be horrible. Tomorrow's gonna be horrible, and it's gonna be right here again. We're gonna do this back-to-back 2 days, and the second day is gonna be possibly worse, but it's gonna be in our backyard again. Crossing Coltrane, look at this. Wow, crossing Coltrane south of 15th Street. And that was part of the emotional part of May 20th, is that we had just had violent weather with violent tornadoes the day before.
A lot of destruction has happened, and the emotion really gets high at that point because you almost feel like you just didn't do enough, or you know, you have this sinking feeling like, I wish there was something more I could have done. Yeah. And you know, our jobs are to track the tornado and warn the public, but you know, we can't stop it.
So we have May 18th, we saw tornadoes. May 19th, we saw tornadoes. And May 20th, we did. But by far, the biggest of those days was May the 20th.
I was a first grade teacher. This was like my first group I had taken from the very, very beginning through. I get migraines, and I had a really bad headache that morning, and I thought about calling in, which is kind of a haunting thing, but it was awards day, and I said, nobody's giving my babies their awards but me. Like, I have to be there.
The 20th was a Monday, and in the racetrack world, we don't really get days off. We typically race on the weekends, and so Mondays are what we call dark days. My wife and I made a plan that I would go into work like I typically do on a Monday, check on my patients, do some routine treatments and things, and then we would all be home together by about 1 o'clock, because that was the time that the forecasters had told us that we needed to be really paying attention.
With another significant risk of large damaging tornadoes. That's a possibility again this afternoon. Again, meteorologist Jed Castle's in with me, and we're going to have the whole team in this afternoon. All the storm trackers will be out. We'll be watching it just like we did yesterday.
I was a para at the elementary school that the girls went to.
And we both had taken off work so we could go close on the house. And we were actually at my mother's house where we were staying temporarily because we had already sold a previous home, loading up all of our stuff to move into the new house. We were really excited about that.
We've got Orr Family Farm, and we run that here. It was a racehorse training facility, so we had a lot of people that needed the facility, to kind of support their livelihood, so to speak. I don't know exactly how many horses were on the place on that day. I'd say, 150. ballpark.
I do want to stress that the entire Oklahoma City metro area is at risk this afternoon, so definitely stay with News 9. We'll keep you advised, and we'll have more on your weather coming up in a bit.
All right, thanks, Michael.
Nothing like being an insurance agent. Springtime in Oklahoma, especially Tornado Alley. So last minute, everyone wants to, make sure their stuff is taken care of. So time flew by that morning, and we had heard that, well, there was a potential, for severe weather. We didn't have a TV in the office, so one of my biggest things was we never saw what was out there.
I had just turned 19, and I had just started summer break from college at OU. It was a normal day. I was probably going to go to the gym. I remember I was sitting at the table when I got the first text message telling me to watch the weather.
We were all told that the propensity for a tornado, a large tornado, was pretty imminent.
So our storm timeline, again, between noon and 2 p.m., that's when we're expecting a 70% chance of severe thunderstorms to develop. Supercells look likely based on the atmospheric conditions.
They were telling us that afternoon that if you were in the path of that tornado and you didn't take cover, you were going to be in some big trouble.
We were watching news reports of tornado damage and things that happened in Shawnee, I think it was. And I remember saying to him, I just cannot imagine what it would feel like to lose everything. And I said that to him before we went to bed. And I would have never imagined that less than 24 hours, I would know exactly what that felt like.
If that tornado is over an open field, moving through, it's picking up sticks and grass and trees and things like that. But when you move through a metropolitan area, every brick on every house being hit by an EF5 becomes a dangerous, deadly projectile. It's like taking a blender, throwing a bunch of nails in it. Everything else becomes shredded because of all the debris that's being made by all the debris. The winds are horrible, but now you throw in, 1 million bricks moving at 300 miles per hour. Well, can't get much worse than that.
The emotional trauma and more is definitely there, and I think it's important when we're broadcasting information that we keep a calm, collective attitude and spirit about us, because if it's something that they need to be concerned about, then we need to make sure that we are definitely calm and accurate in our reporting.
We knew that we were in for a lot of heartache, a lot of hard work. The sky was a greenish yellow, just a stormy looking day. Then you started having the clouds that hold hail, and you knew a bad storm was coming. People they're rushing around everywhere. They're trying to get food. They're trying to load stuff up and get out of town.
If you're from Oklahoma, specifically Tornado Alley, you just know there's a certain smell of the air, color of the sky. It turns greenish yellow, and there's this storms have a smell, and it's something that you need to be on guard. You need to be weather aware.
Everybody was just waiting for the shoe to drop. That's kind of the best way I can tell you, is that we all knew it was coming, and it was just wasn't sure when it was going to happen.
It came straight down. It's turning into a fairly strong tornado at the moment.
It is.
There's a debris cloud on the ground with it, Gary. It's straight west of us, slightly south of straight west. This thing looks like it's moving. It's going to.
There was a big feeder band. It's called an inflow feeder band, and sometimes you'll get these from the southeast, from the northeast. This thing from the northeast was over my head, but it was just north of me, like literally right here, feeding in from the northeast because it's spinning counterclockwise. That feeder band went from there, it looked like it went to Dallas. And that is the low level, what we call jet, that's feeding into it. But anyway, all this was right there. All right, I'm gonna get out of the car for a second. For 1 minute. We got hail.
It started hailing, and so we had decided that we were gonna go ahead and stop what we were doing and go to the school to pick up the girls.
I did what we've always done when there's, bad weather. Go outside in the driveway. And of course it was all the guys that lived around my house were all outside in the driveway. And so we're all looking at the clouds and talking.
So I remember looking off to the southwest. The wall cloud is this bulbous looking, it's not a huge wall cloud, but the whole base is spinning. This is still crazy. And then I look right to the right of the water tower, right there, between the water tower and the power lines, and I see two little vortices. And that was the beginning of, oh no. Wow, look at the spin, guys. Look at the spin. At this point, the chase is on. So what I did is I went east on this 149th, back down about 2 miles, and I turned around and faced it so I could watch it as it came out of the river.
We had a friend that had passed away, and I was at her funeral about 1.5 miles away. But I know for my crew that was working here, and my family that was here, a lot of them didn't know until it was just about here. I mean, they might have had a 10, 15 minute heads up that it was about to hit.
And I picked my kids up from PE, and then we went back to the classroom and started preparing the go-home preparations, getting backpacks, getting ready. And my principal came over the intercom and said, we need to take our tornado precautions.
You know, is this really important? Should we go? But I felt pretty strongly, you know, at that time, we need to go check on them. That's the first priority.
Okay, this thing is changing right now. Southwest 149th in May. When things are happening so quickly. Yeah, look at that. You know, the tornado itself is inside that mesocyclone. It's working its way down to the ground. I mean, I knew it was over. Those little vortices, I see like probably 2 or 3 minutes of that. It's clearly on the ground, and then it just sits down with one.
I'm on South Pennsylvania here. Look at the tornado now. Take our stream. It'll be slightly delayed. This is going to be an EF2. It's going to be about 200 yards wide. EF2, now it's growing. Wow, Gary, it's a destructive tornado. Now becoming a destructive tornado. EF2.
That's a large tornado. It's going to be 1/8 of a mile wide, a few hundred yards wide. Winds in there well over 150 miles per hour. Now going from an EF2 to possibly an EF3 tornado. That's going to be a deadly tornado. And look at it forming right now just to the west and southwest side. It's set down as an EF2 and EF3. It's set down violent. And what I mean by that is you can look at it and it's very laminar and smooth. And I can see it waving up the side. And anytime you see it waving up the side, those are high velocity wind speeds. It's not ragged. It's not like you see clouds kind of hanging around it and doing all that. It was very smooth. And the one unique thing about that was how quickly it went from an elephant trunk violent tornado. Look at all the debris.
Now he's on.
To a very large. Gary, it's going through homes right now. Killer EF5. It's going through homes. Can you guys hear me?
We set up east of the tornado. We picked a spot to where I anticipated the tornado would just barely go north of us, and it turned out to be just about right. We're getting probably 80-mile-an-hour winds at our location. This thing is 1/4 mile north of us. It's on 149th, and Gary, it is moving straight east, right along 149th Street. Man, if you live there, Yeah. 149th Street, I guess. Okay. There is just a ton of debris.
Right now we've seen debris in the air, we've seen it hit houses, we've saw power flashes. This is turning into a very destructive tornado, and it is getting bigger by the minute, Gary.
Jim, it's a huge tornado. As you stay with us here, I'm just going to give some streets.
And then just like, you know, you flip a switch, it starts to pick up speed. And now it's still, you know, we're still looking at a 1/2 mile to 3/4 of a mile wide tornado. Winds in excess of 200 miles per hour. Moving due east, now coming into a very highly populated area.
As it's a giant tornado, safety precautions are below ground's best. If you don't have that, you get in a well-constructed building, or you get in the center part of your house, closet or bathroom, put many walls between you and the tornado as possible.
It was about 20 minutes into the funeral, they said, take cover. And so a group of us went outside on the west end of the church, and we watched it come across.
It was enormous. And in that moment, I knew that it was gonna hit us.
As it's coming at me, I do remember cars way down there coming out of these driveways. So people are leaving. I'm headed north on Santa Fe, and there's a bunch of neighborhoods. This car comes at me, her her lights were on, and in this truck, I had flashing, strobing lights. I mean, it was all lit up, and I was hard to miss. We made eye contact. I rolled my window down. She saw me. I looked at her, and I was shaking my head like, pointing, no, you can't go home. You can't go home. And that was it. I remember just that quick snapshot moment of what she was doing, what she was thinking, and it was all in her face. I never knew the outcome to that. And it's one of those things that, I think about. Listen, those stories are everywhere. But when you have a moment like that where you see somebody right then, right now, that's really a minute away from being possibly safe in a storm shelter or in their safe place, or, they're not.
At that point, when we were sitting there southwest of Orr Farms, watching that tornado grow to our west, and it was moving into populated areas, at that time, my mind was saying, this is not going to be good.
Okay, I believe that's Santa Fe right there. Is a log jam. It's a log jam right there. Now, this tornado is only about a quarter mile west of that road right there, and it's just log jammed right
It just continued to kind of grow, and once it got almost directly parallel with us out to the west, it stopped moving. It just started to grow. That's when I went back into the school and I told my wife, I was like, you need to understand what danger we're in.
It was there. We didn't have any time to go anywhere else. And we went in our classroom, and as soon as we got in, we jumped on top of the kids, and it wasn't but 10 seconds that it hit.
We had got into the corner of the room where we felt like we were the safest, and we were under desks. The thought was, well, maybe we still have a chance it'll go around us, right? But once the lights went off, power went off, we were just there huddled in that corner, waiting for whatever was to come. I didn't think we would survive. I really didn't.
Things were hitting the building. It was just loud, like bam, bam, bam. And then I heard a whoosh, and that was the roof getting ripped off. And then that's the last thing I remember, because after the roof was ripped off, the wall fell on top of me, and it knocked me unconscious.
You're showing them the video from the ground, from the chopper. They're seeing all this stuff. They're looking at radar. They're looking at the hook. They're looking at the scorpion tail. They know what this thing looks like on radar. But I think sometimes the message that they don't want to absorb, maybe because they've been through it, maybe because they've seen it before, is that this is another violent, potentially killer tornado that's a mile wide, that's, churning up the earth.
So the overpass is up high, and I can see over the hospital and see the ominous black coming towards me. Of course, I couldn't make out that it was a tornado.
School's letting out.
Here it is.
As we were traveling north on Santa Fe, pink insulation from homes was just splattering all over our windshield.
We started getting peppered with that stuff. And anytime you start to get hit by pink insulation, that's a bad sign, because homes are being hit.
Power lines were just shaking violently, and this monster was just right in front of us, headed right for Plaza Towers Elementary.
We can still see it because it's so big, but it's becoming a lot harder to see now as it's approaching I-35. I'm at I-35 looking southbound, Gary, and it's just a monster. It's a half mile. Every bit of a half mile, and again, probably an EF4, possibly even stronger.
The ceiling went first. I remember that going. The cinder block wall that was across from us started to kind of crumble, like it started to disintegrate. My kids were along this wall, and so I kind of realized where we were wasn't safe, so I had a little girl was next to me here, and I picked her up and I turned in that corner of the bathroom, like the entrance zigzagged back in, and so there was this corner, and I put her there, and then I got the next girl and put her there. But then I vividly can remember like the two little girls that were clawing to get under my skin, and like the closest to me, I can remember exactly what they said, you know, the details of one of them screaming, I want to go home. I want to go home, and the other one screaming, I want my mom. I want my mom. And then one of them asking me, are we gonna die? We were kind of becoming buried where we sat in a way. And so I just kind of kept thinking, I can't take much more. Like I don't know how much more I can handle. I pulled in with those girls and I just said, we're gonna go home. We're about to go home.
Bugsy, get inside! Get inside! Get inside!
It was about a block and a half away, and then after that is when I got into the storm shelter and closed the door. So it was very steep stairs to get down into the shelter, and I literally sat on the highest step that I could fit on to bend over and still have the door closed behind me. So everyone else is down, so I can see everyone. Kids were screaming, dogs barking, just chaos. But it wasn't very long, and it started pulling the door. And of course, there was a gap between the latch and where it caught. I reached over my right shoulder like this and grabbed it and just hunched down and put all my weight on it and just held on. We probably were in the storm shelter less than 3 minutes. So much stuff was hitting that metal door. It was extremely loud. I mean, I could feel it pulling on me. Once the amount of debris hitting the door had slowed.
Oh my God, it's gone. It's gone, Liz.
That's when I cracked the door and panned my phone around, and you could see that it had just moved past us, and it was just to the east of the house, which happened to be where the elementary school was.
I stopped on that bridge and turned around and looked back at the tornado as it was coming at me.
34 and I-32 down, and the back end of the tornado is not quite
35 yet. I can still see the front lip, but you can see our stream here. Absolutely, how amazing! And it's amazing. It's every bit of a half mile, maybe a mile wide.
We positioned the girls in the bathtub, and we were kneeling and putting our bodies over the top of them.
So he was holding the mattress, so on the other side, we locked arms with each other. And then we just kind of, like, were standing on our knees and, like, leaned over the top of the girls.
We believed that the Lord could save us.
We just were praying. We just were praying. It got loud. It was to the point where I felt like I was talking or as loud as I could, but I couldn't hear myself at all.
And we could hear things just breaking and cracking outside. And that was when she said the tornado is here.
And then just all of a sudden, it got bright. So it was like, okay, it was dark, and then it was light. It's like the walls are gone.
Clear power lines down.
So my dad was on patrol that day, and he was one of those calls that came in that I honestly was kind of like, hey, you're getting in the way of me doing my job for a second. What's up, Dad? And he said, sis, I'm sitting on the corner of 4th and Santa Fe, and I'm looking right at it. It's coming right towards you.
I talked to her and I told her, hey, this thing is on the ground, it's coming our way, you need to leave now. And the last thing that I heard from her was, okay, Dad, I'm packing stuff up and we're getting out of here.
And I bet no more than 2 minutes later, my boss came in and he said, okay, it's here. It's gonna hit, we're gonna be okay, but let's get under this table. And myself and 4 other people got under this small table without even thinking and just crouched down underneath it. And then he ran in and he said, okay, it's gonna hit us. It's gonna hit us, but hang tight, we're gonna be okay. The building's gonna hold up. We're gonna lose the roof, but we'll be okay.
It's called a multiple vortex tornado. It looks like one tornado, but it's not. And that's what makes it so deadly, is that you have inside this wall of 200+ mile/hour winds, you have these other small vortices that are, winds are 150 to 200 miles per hour that are moving at ground speed of 150 miles per hour inside the main circulation. So let's say this part of the wall doesn't get you so much, you're partially still there, and then this next tornado will come in with a matter of a millisecond later, and that'll hit you and take you out.
It was quiet, and then sure enough, the roof came off immediately, and that's when you hear just the roar. Freight train, like you hear people say, it's every bit of that. The loudest, scariest, twisted metal sounds that I've ever heard in my life. And at the same time, when the roof comes off, it just felt like a vacuum. So immediately pushed us through a couple of walls, which to me just felt like sliding. It felt like slide, 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 and then it was just like a vacuum, but stacking. So everything around us just was stack, 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 and it got darker and heavier and tighter. And it felt like an eternity. And in that moment, I believed with everything that I had that we were gonna die.
In that moment, instantly, the wind, the ferocious wind, and what was in the air was hitting us.
I could feel it like shoving the tub towards me. I felt the tub actually like cave in because it was hitting my knees.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just remember that sensation of the tub is bending, like it's moving, and there's nothing else you can do. I mean, we're either all gonna be there or we're not. We didn't know when it was gonna end. We didn't know who would be there when it was over. It was just completely at the Lord's mercy.
Right.
All right, we're on the east sides of Moore. This is Sooner Road. Look at the tornado. Look at what's gonna be an EF3, EF4, maybe an EF5 tornado. Listen to the roar. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like rushing water. Look at the tornado right here. Absolutely amazing. Winds in there well over 200 miles per hour. It has cut a path from Newcastle through Moore, now East Moore, and that is a violent tornado. That is that's a killer tornado, no doubt about it. And look at the motion there, and you can hear it. And as I get out, I see it, and it's right here. I mean, it's just the stovepipe. And debris goes across the road, and it goes to my south, and then off to my southeast. We went from a stovepipe tornado to within about 5 to 10 seconds to just what we call a double helix. It was these two violently rotating pieces of air, and then it did this, and it went down, and it came back up, and it was gone. So what began back by Newcastle ended right here, and it ended within about 30 seconds. It went from a violent, deadly killer tornado to nothing at all, and it was gone. And I'm standing right there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's gone. And now behind me, I've got, an hour, over 20 miles of just complete carnage.
I started getting calls and texts from people who were associated with the racetrack through my work because we heard that Celestial Acres, which was a training center in Moore, had been hit directly. And so somehow the information had gotten out amongst the racetrack people that it had been hit, that horses had been killed and injured, and they needed help.
I was surprised how many police officers were already in the area. I couldn't get into my dad's drive. It had too many trees that had toppled over, so I came in the main farm entrance, and excuse me. It was pretty crazy. Stuff was gone. First thing is, where's my family, and making sure, and our employees, and thankfully we found them a few minutes later. And then we started, going out on the farm and checking for, what was going on with everything there, and it was chaos.
And I remember looking at that scene, and it's sort of one of those kind of almost outer body experiences, but I remember hearing myself say, "Oh no." And I just said, "Oh no, over and over again," because I didn't really have any idea what I was about to see.
These are your people that you know have been impacted, and you are familiar with the area you're now driving through, that everything has been wiped, right? It is truly catastrophic. It is war zone-like, all those things that you only see on TV.
That's something you really can't put into words, and you really can't capture with video or photography, and it's an entire sensory experience, and it's everything from the sound of the helicopters and the sound of people screaming and the smell of the, things that have been burned and destroyed, and so it just all combines into a really terrible picture.
Everything from, about 3.5 feet on up, it was gone. I looked down and I saw that there was this section of this wall that was right on top where my wife and my daughter was. So I'm like, I gotta get that wall off of her. So I did the best that I could to lift it up, picked up as much as I could, just enough to where they could slide out from underneath it. And when your adrenaline's like that, all you're thinking about is, I gotta save my wife, I gotta save my kid and the other kids and make sure everybody's okay. So once that's over with, then it's like we survived. I think that was the biggest thing I remember thinking to myself, we survived. But immediately I'm thinking, where's my daughter's at?
In my mind, I thought, there's no way our girls survived this. Like, you literally thought in that moment we went from a family of 5 to a family of 3 because we knew Erin was okay, she was with us. But I thought by looking around that there was no way that they were going to be okay.
Jim Gardner, does that look like a school to you?
Yes, it is. It is, Kelly.
Oh.
This ain't good, that's for sure.
No, it's not.
People are digging through the debris. Sorry, Kelly, it just gets a little hard to talk here.
You could see from the storm shelter all the way to Santa Fe. I mean, as far as your eye could see, there was really not much obstructing your view anymore. And somebody there said that there were kids in the school, and that's when I turned around and looked and saw the school.
When that tornado went by, I had to pick my way up through that road with down power lines and stuff like this to get to that school. And it probably took me 20 minutes or so to get up into the residential area and make it to that school.
So I ran up there, and there was a wall that had fallen at an angle. So I just pulled a couple bricks out, and I laid down and stuck my head in the hole that I had just cleared, and scared me a little bit, just right there in your face. I mean, her face was this far away from mine when I stuck my face down there. And made a hole big enough and climbed in and started to help her get free.
Come here. Can you move to me? Can you move to me? Okay. Come on. You got it. Come here. Come on. Can you move?
Her leg is kind of stuck.
Can you pull it out or no?
I think.
No? All right. Come on. Can you get it? You got it? All right. Come on, sweetie.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Thank you so much.
Come on, sweetie.
Handed her out to people up above us, and then I got back in the hole, and I remember that's when I realized the innocence of what was going on, because of the small backpacks, and as I'm pulling them to hand them out, the big fat Crayola washable markers are falling out of backpacks, and crayons and things like that. It's just like kind of a wow moment. And that's when I found an arm that was there, and unfortunately, that's when I realized what had happened.
initially, you're just trying to find survivors. And I personally didn't come across a lot of survivors where I was. And we had located a large piece of wall that had fallen, and were able to tell that there were multiple victims underneath there. And shortly after I arrived there, we didn't have any crime scene tape up or anything like that. It'd just been too soon. So you just had everybody that could show up was clamoring all over that school, trying to render aid to anybody that needed it. Man, I don't know. I went directly to one spot, and it ended up being the one spot.
I got no response from the person, and I stepped out, and there was, I believe it was an off-duty police officer, I'm not sure where he worked, standing there, and I told him what was there. He's the one who told me at the time, okay, we've got to move past them and try to save the ones we can.
I heard people outside the building yelling, you know, are you in there? Where are you? I realized that the semblance of a hallway, like it's not like we're gonna walk out of this building. The little girl that was closest to me here was in flip-flops, so her shoes are in Kansas. So I scoop her up and I'm carrying her, and I tell them, you're gonna step, where I step, you step. And so we go out, there's like a vehicle flipped upside down in part of the hallway. We end up going, I think, what was a pre-K room, climbed up onto a teacher's desk, and then over part of a wall. And so then immediately I turn around and I'm looking at a leveled building. I'm looking at a leveled neighborhood, and I'm kind of at that, I don't know what to do.
So we're just making our way to where everybody is headed. Like everybody's kind of just getting out of the classrooms, filtering out, and heading to the front. And as we got there, we saw the teacher that was carrying our middle daughter. And then I don't remember, our oldest just was there. I mean,
she came out of nowhere.
She just came out of nowhere. She was there. And
yeah,
so
she did. Yeah.
My heart was... We had this immense amount of guilt. Why didn't I get my kids? Why didn't I leave? And we didn't get our kids and we didn't leave because we really didn't think or believe that that was gonna happen. And so when they were all okay, there was just this huge relief and just gratitude that a choice that I made didn't take their life.
When you're in there, in the middle of all this destruction and stuff, the sights and the smells just overwhelm you. We had guys going door to door with spray paint, you know, going, such and such group has already checked this, we have one deceased here, or it's just things like that that you go through, that traumatic experience that you're never gonna forget.
They were slowly picked up, one at a time. And my last student to be picked up was my little turkey that had to sit on this shoulder in the bathroom. What's the lowest possible area? Well, there's this creek that ran next to the school in the neighborhood, and so there's this little bridge, and I thought, I'll take him down there. I remember being really annoyed at myself. I couldn't stop shaking. So I had him in front of me, and I was holding my arms, trying to be still. And I said, "Hey, buddy, are you okay?" And he said, "I just don't want to look at it anymore." And so we just stood there, me and him, and I was holding him around, just kind of hugged up against me. And then I make eye contact and I see his dad. And that's one of those, like, you know, you see the pictures of like cement and the one flower growing out of it. Okay, this is like the flower moment for me. Is I see that dad and he sees me, and I got his boy, and he starts running at a dead sprint. You know, he's sweating. You can tell he's been, because he couldn't, I mean, how do you get there? And I said, "Hey, there's your dad." And he starts running, and that unbridled love of a father for his son, you know? Because my mom told me later that they were reporting, like, nobody's coming out alive. They were saying that nobody's coming, they don't see anybody coming out of the elementary school. Like, that's what my mom was hearing as she was driving. And when he saw his son, I mean, just that, I said, the unbridled love of a father for his son, and it's just something I will never forget.
So they got to us, pitch black. You started seeing light coming in. And I was actually the closest to where they were digging. So by the time they recovered us, my back was exposed to them. And they did. I mean, we're all entangled within each other. So they pulled me out first. And that's a whole other feeling of, holy crap. Standing up and doing a 360, everything is gone. From there, it's, okay, how do we get, you know, the 4 other people that are still under there out? And that process took about an hour. You could have 5 strong men there digging, and it just, everything was so tight and entangled within each other that it took a while to get everyone out. Once I came to and realized what the heck just happened, we're buried, got dug out, everything is gone. There's 5, 6 cars in our building. I mean, my car landed right beside us, along with 4 other cars. At that point, I was waiting for my dad to show up. A minute didn't go by without me looking for those lights.
I didn't realize till I got home about 1 o'clock that morning that Amanda and her coworkers didn't ever leave. They had looked out the back door, the tornado was on the ground, it was coming to them, and Jim just thought it was more dangerous to allow them to leave then and be caught in a car out in that storm. So they huddled up underneath a round conference table in that building, and an entire building came down on top of them. I had no idea till I came home, and she and her coworkers were saved.
First of all, we're just so excited that we're all there. I mean, we're obviously in shock. And the girls, I mean, we looked at them, and I mean, they looked like perfectly normal.
The damage to the tub is just incredible. There's actually dents from the bottom up of debris going and bouncing up at the bottom of the tub. And the water heater that was in the garage had rolled up next to the bathtub to help protect us. And it was just a little pile of debris that had wrapped around us. There's so many things that are unexplainable to me, you know, and I went through it, and I still, 10 years later, I cannot wrap my head around it.
We survived that. That's pretty crazy that something so terrible, we made it through. I'm very thankful for that part of it, that we were all together.
You know I carried this without crying, like, you know that. Dear committee members, it is with pride that I compose this letter to support Miss Becky Oglesby's candidacy for State Teacher of the Year. Miss Oglesby was my son Austin's first grade teacher. It was during his second year with Miss Oglesby
and Plaza Towers Elementary was impacted by the May 20th, 2013 tornado. It is with no exaggeration that I proclaim Miss Oglesby single-handedly saved my son's life and the lives of others that day. From warning sirens until the moment she returned each student into the thankful arms of their parents, she displayed exemplary courage and composure under the pressure of imminent danger. Miss Oglesby continued to serve as the pillar in many of our lives during the events that followed this tragedy. She shared her strength to those who had none, provided comfort, joy, and hope when all was felt to be lost. I cannot write this recommendation without expressing my overwhelming gratitude for her role in the life of my family and the Plaza Towers community.
Every moment is significant, and every moment with the student matters. And when that is playing in your background, creates a whole different sense of purpose.
It was a few weeks later, talking to people. I had people from all over the country calling and talking to me. One person was a retired Seattle fire chief, I believe, and he told me that he felt I would make a great firefighter or first responder. And that's what kind of, got me to think, I might be able to do that. So now I'm 28 years old. I work for the Oklahoma City Fire Department, and I'm a lieutenant at Station 9, Southwest 89th and Penn. I think the biggest takeaway for me from that day, even though it was a tragedy as big as it was, it gave me a purpose in life and showed me what I needed to do when I had no idea before that day what I was meant to do.
It's embedded in who I am now. That day plays such a big role in who I am today with overcoming tragedy. I'm extremely blessed to be surrounded by the people who I was with that day. It's like we share a connection that I hope no one else ever has to go through. It definitely makes us closer and stronger.
We started having conversations like, hey, we should start an organization. We should have something set up because, like, Moore was a good example. On the small animal side, they were very coordinated and they were very well organized. It's a lot harder on the large animal side. You can't put a horse in your car and evacuate it. So Oklahoma Large Animal First Responders is our group.
It's just been very inspiring to see someone like him that was directly impacted right there in the middle of it and then taken that experience and has done a lot of good with it.
When somebody asks about the tornado, I like to show them the bathtub because it brings to life our story, because you can see the damage that affected the bathtub itself, and yet we were right there with it. It's got all the scarring, it's got the impacts.
I think that's one reason it's kind of neat to see the tub, because it reminds us of why we feel the way we do when we think about what happened.
I feel like your most precious commodity or asset that you have is your time and what you choose to do with it. We had so many come out and help. We were truly blessed.
People go through tough times, but it's through those tough times that they become more resilient And they learn to love people, and they learn to be humble and really think about the purpose of life.
The people that are really part of this story are truly what Oklahoma is about, right? It's the toughness, it's the grit, it's the hope and the spirit of what lays ahead that really needs to be captured in the story.
Within a year after the Moore tornado, I met this man. He was super nice and shook his hand, and I tried to pull it back, and he didn't let go. Just tears just start coming out of his eyes. I mean, he's crying, he's weeping. So I'm standing there, and Gardner's standing there, and I go, hang on just a second. So I put my other hand on his, and I'm like, hey man, it's okay. No, it's all good. Sorry. What happened? And he said, it's Plaza Towers. And I go, oh my gosh. So he goes, as I pull in, I get out and I run up to the doors. They've got him chained from the inside. And I'm out there, and he goes, I stop for a second, and I'm banging on the doors trying to get him open, and he goes, it's loud, but not as loud as I can hear that. And he said, I just see debris coming up over me. This other lady walks up, unlocks the chain, throws the chain off, and she says, go, 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 your daughter's down the hall and in some bathroom. I go tearing down the hall, I go in there she is. And I see her and I go, it's gonna be fine. He goes, I got down on her, I put my hand over, my body over her neck and her back of her, and I basically got on top of her. You can hear steel tearing and breaking and this and that. My truck that I parked up out front, they found it like close to I-35. And he goes, another bad part of this whole thing is that my house, I live in between Briarwood and Plaza. And he goes, my house was completely leveled and gone. And I go, but, and he goes, but we're alive. You know, he was going to die, but didn't. He was going to be with his daughter at all costs. He could have turned around at the door when it was basically a few hundred yards behind him. It was so loud. And he wasn't going to do that. No matter what, he was getting into the building, he was going to be with his daughter, and however that turned out was however that was going to turn out. And he could have died, but he didn't. It's the reason that we do what we do, is to give people information and hopefully make a difference and hopefully, you know, keep them and their families safe.
Wow, you and I watched this, I don't know how many times now, and every time we watch it, it's still emotional, you know, to watch. I mean, all the stories that came out of, you know, May 20th, 2013. And what's interesting is that we're over a decade later, and how many people, still so many untold stories out there like these.
Yeah, they're so important.
So important that people went through, and they relive these and live these every day, especially every spring, especially on the anniversaries. But just how many stories bring out emotion, whether it's, you know, 10 years later.
Yeah.
And the generations that it's going to always move through. You know, these people, their kids and grandkids, after we're long and gone, those generations of families that were impacted directly, whether they lost somebody or were just hit directly, are still going to be talking about May 20th of 2013. And the
it's
stories
like it just happened yesterday.
I know. They're so compelling.
They're so compelling. And I loved the quote in there of, this is something that you only see on TV. How many times do we have that play out in Oklahoma where it's something you only see on TV if you're somewhere else in the world? But for Oklahoma and for the heart of the state, we get those images only here. I mean, there's the devastation and then how that impacts those folks for the rest of their lives.
Keeping you and your family safe is really what this job is all about, especially to the weather team of experts right here at News 9. Our storm trackers, the largest team of storm trackers in the nation, have over 350 years combined chasing severe weather.
Up next, we're sharing stories from the front lines, chasing Oklahoma's violent tornadoes, when the storms that shape us returns.
Then May 20th, we start looking at the data that morning, and it's like, man, Oklahoma City is right in the target.
I kind of had a sense that it was going to be a big storm, but nothing that big.
People ask all the time, what's the worst event that you've covered, or what's the event that changed you the most? And for me, it's May 20th of 2013. May 20th, of course, we had already covered a tornado outbreak from the day before.
Yeah,
so
huge.
Coming into work, we all knew it was the potential to be another big day.
Yep.
And tensions were high, and the forecast unfortunately played out in the absolute most horrific way. On May 20th, I was very young in my career. I had been at News 9 for a couple of years and just had no idea what would unfold as we got into the 2-3 o'clock hour that day. It was awful. And you went out chasing. I remember we all had our positions and where we were gonna go.
What do you have there, Lacey?
David is on 240 just north of Lake Stanley Draper. At that time, my role was to kind of be in the weather pod, and I had a headset. I was coordinating with the control room.
Big, yeah.
Right, it was. And talking with the meteorologists and then also the trackers in the field on the Getner. And so it was my first time with such a life-threatening event, hearing all the trackers and what they were going through and what they were seeing, and juggling with such a big team. And I felt like such a very, very small part of a much bigger picture. As the day went on, it was just wild to see the video and the images coming out of what had happened. I'd never seen anything like that in my career. I was, much younger when the previous Moore tornado had hit.
There's so much debris in the road, and with all these houses now gone, it's kind of hard if you don't know your way around here to understand where you're going.
I remember whenever it was Carl Torp and his crew, his photographer, had got down to the scene, and it was right after the tornado had gone through, and actually seeing what we knew was playing out on radar. We knew it was playing out in your shot, in our storm tracker shots, in Jim's shots, and we knew people were probably dying. But once you saw those images and you saw parents and neighbors and friends and family literally picking up rocks and throwing them and trying to get to kids in buildings, it was a career-changing, life-changing event for me.
And you've had other big events since then, but
Right.
you look back and I remember every turn, everything I did that day on a lot of those big days.
Yes.
I remember the street I went down, where I stopped, where I paused, what I was thinking. But I know, and what's weird about that day is how fast it formed early in the day.
Right.
And I went to Indian Hills Road. That was my target. I went down Indian Hills Road and pulled over and went, I'm just going to wait.
Right.
And how fast it went up and how fast it did what it did, which was horrible and horrific, and then how fast it was over with. And within just a matter of what seemed like 10 minutes, but it really wasn't very long, when it moved into southwest Oklahoma City, then across Moore, how it was just over. And it started so small, but then quickly became so violent. And then when it ended,
Yep, roped out and it was done.
and it had done all that between, the west and the east. And, I was going down southwest, 149th, same road, May 3rd, all over again. And that's what I kept playing in my mind.
Yeah.
Is that, and it didn't hit me that it was happening again when it was west of I-44. It was still an elephant trunk. I knew it was violent because it came down, I had multiple vortices. When it crossed I-44, when it took on the shape and the violence, and then I was like, same location, basically the same area. And
You've been there before.
I've been here, and I thought, I've been there many, many times on other smaller events, but I thought, we're gonna do this again. And then, the rest is history.
This is almost taking the same path as of May 3rd, 1999. It's just a little north of that path, but just a massive tornado here.
It was mind-blowing. I thought this can't be happening again. It just can't be. I mean, what's the percentage that this would happen in the same spot, go through almost the exact same path, and do it again?
You can see with these live pictures, and you can tell there's some rain there on the camera, but you can just tell already that some areas are just obliterated.
Wow. The percentages had to be so small for that tornado to form and track the same direction and do the same damage. I was blown away. I was even on the air, I was saying, I can't believe this.
I could almost bet that if you had a map from May 3rd, 1999 and overlaid it on this tornado now, it'd probably be almost the same path.
May 20th, 2013, when it hit that school, that was something that ripped my heart out. I don't want any kid to go through that. So that's why, again, we do what we do, is that those parents can get those kids and get them safe. If I get to talking about little kids, I get pretty choked up.
Jim Gardner, does that look like a school to you?
Yes, it is. It is, Kelly.
Oh.
This is just This ain't good, that's
No,
for sure.
No, it's not.
I mean, people are digging through the debris. Sorry, Kelly, it just gets a little hard to talk here.
It's hard to talk because I know the parents that lost those kids and stuff, and when they went through that school, I thought, my gosh, how could you be so cruel to go right through the center of that school? After May 20th, 2013, you know, I mean, you just kind of go home and sit and cry. I think that day after, you're always on a high, because your adrenaline's so high after you land. And you usually go out, you know, and have a beer or something, man, because you're trying to unwind because your adrenaline's so high. But then when you come down off that, then you start thinking, you know, and I think I actually sobbed that night, man, because after I finally came down off that adrenaline rush and stuff and started thinking about what happened, then it really hit you. I'm just gonna keep trying my best and keep doing what I do till we get this where we don't lose anybody. Because if we're not out there, then what does the viewer have? Radar screen with colors, you know? And so we gotta keep doing what we do. We can't stop.
Southwest 156, and it's Southwest 149.
You know, we haven't had an EF5 in the whole country since that day, that moment. So they are very rare. They just don't happen. Less than 1% of all tornadoes are EF5 tornadoes. So seeing something, you know, like that is rare. You're watching it and you become mesmerized by what you're seeing, kind of in shock and awe of just witnessing something that powerful, being able to feel it, hear it. Normally in a tornado, all you do is see it and, you know, that's about it. But this one, you know, pretty much all of your senses are there telling you what you're witnessing. You know, after that day, it really kind of gets to you when you hear about all the children that died, all the people that died, people that were on the road, a woman that took shelter in a 7-Eleven. We had just passed by that 7-Eleven minutes before that. Just knowing all the people that lost their lives, lost their homes, and there's nothing you can really do about it. You kind of witness it and you report about it. But that kind of gets to you, and you kind of never forget it. You know, in the future, wondering, you know, what we could do better. You know, that day kind of changes what you do for later chases and how you chase, how you report things. It changes you.
Moore is like a big little town because it's like everywhere you go, you run into somebody you know or knew or was an acquaintance with. When something like that happens, you look around and you start remembering, oh my goodness, so-and-so was here or so-and-so was here, you know. So Moore it's kind of like that. Big little town. Everybody knows everybody just about.
And that's the second time we went through it because, you know, we were there for May 3rd as well. And so you know, I graduated from Westmore High School. So both of them tornadoes either hit Westmore or within a mile of Westmore. So yeah, that's my stomping grounds. And so yeah, it is a lot more intense. I still have such a love for just the awesome experience of storms and severe convective weather here. But there's a duty. I mean, we've been doing that, and I feel that God's given us not only a privilege, but a duty to be out there, to be able to inform people. Well, that day, May 20th, was such a dynamic day, or, you know, such a high-risk day. We took our kids with us. And people are always like, why would you take your kids chasing? And I was like, after May 3rd, I don't want to dig them out of the house. I don't want to have to dig them out of the rubble. I'd rather them be with me, you know. I mean, we've got a shelter and all of that, but it's the, you know, everything gets shut down and blocked off, and it's, you know, it's all chaos and, you know, kind of pandemonium for a while. We were not on the tornado that actually came through Moore. We were on a tornado-warned storm further south.
We can put him on together.
We need to go to Hank.
We need to go to Hank.
Gary, I'm in Purnell. There's a tornado that keeps touching down just west of Foster.
And we're listening to the coverage, and so we can kind of hear what's going on.
Still a massive tornado here, and of course it's getting hard to see, and that's not just from rain, that's from all the debris that is now circulating with that tornado.
So we're kind of listening to it, and the kids don't really even understand kind of really what's going on. And then we start hearing about where it's coming into Moore.
What's our east-west street?
134th.
134th and Western. It's about ready to cross Western here from the southwest. You can take our stream. It's right in front of us.
This thing is on 149th Street. It's right in front of us. It is tearing up everything it hits. The sky is absolutely full of debris.
I asked a question. I said, hey, did it go down 4th Street or is it on 19th Street? And one of the meteorologists comes over and he said, Hank, you need to go home. Now, in 20 years of storm chasing at that time, never has anybody ever said anything like that to me. So I knew the severity of that. And when he said, hey, you need to go home, while I'm on a tornado-warned storm, I looked at Patty and she kind of looked at me and I just went. And my son, I believe, who was probably 6 or 7, he said, is Grandma dead? And I said, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. And we turned around and we came back. Well, during that time when I'm trying to have that conversation, Patty is on the phone with her nephew who is at her mother's house and like, you know, what do we do? What do we, you know, he's trying to get some instruction. Where do we shelter? This is big. You know, Patty's like, hey, this is bigger than a normal type of tornado. And they're in a car and, you know, trying to get, you know, and I was like, just drive north. Just, you're going to go through baseball size hell, but just blast through the hell. Just get it, you know, you can't ride that tornado out in a car. That was pretty intense. So she's got that conversation going on and then I've got this conversation going on and then we both kind of looked at each other and was like, oh, this is probably bad.
There is complete destruction, tears in people's eyes as they see this scene. It is absolutely an amazing scene. And a Moore police officer just told me just a short time ago there is an elementary school that was hit. I asked if there were kids inside that elementary school. He said yes.
We were hearing the reporting on Plaza Towers. We have friends, the principal of Plaza Towers at that time is a real good friend of ours. And so you start thinking about, you know, all of these things that's going on. We kind of get back up to the neighborhood. So it missed our house by about 1/4 mile. It got the end of our neighborhood, but missed our home. It then hit my mother's home, her mother's home where her sister lived and her nieces lived, and then multiple friends in that Plaza Towers neighborhood, the neighborhood I grew up in. And it was just wiped out. And of course, you know, by then everybody's trying to control the area and get it shut down and all those things you have to do to clear gas leaks and the danger of the debris. And we finally got in touch with other family members. My mother and stepfather actually rode it out in their house. Now we know that, hey, that's a lot better odds than leaving and going somewhere, you know, and that tornado helped kind of define that. As many structures that were hit and destroyed, she rode an F5 out in the Plaza Towers addition in the bathroom of her house, and they were both, you know, come out unscathed. So that's kind of changed the way we've thought about shelters if you don't have a storm shelter.
Still ahead on the storms that shape us. Val and Amy Castor share what they learned after the May 3rd, 1999 tornado that changed the way they chase.
Plus, what it's like in the emotional aftermath of storms like this.
You know, those days are all so different, but yet so similar. And like, even when we're in the studio now, doing what we do, it's so hard sometimes when you have an event going and you know that the potential is there or it's doing horrible things and you cannot let it show. But you'll see times, and you do the same thing, I think, kind of step away for a second, and I do too. You have to reset because emotionally,
right.
I think we've seen what it does, what it can do, what we know that it's doing. We're looking at velocity data, we're looking at the tracker feeds, we know what's happening. And it's horrible, and there's nothing we can do. But what we can do is do what we do, and that's tell people where it is, where it's been, and where it's gonna be. But that emotional thing, it's kind of weird. I put it in the back of my head when I'm on the wall, but gosh darn it, if it every now and then it comes forward, and I'll just step off. I may not say anything, or I may reach over and grab some grapes or do something weird, but that's just me, you know,
refocusing.
Just for like 10 seconds. And then and then I can focus, then I'm back in, I get back into that mode. But those are life-changing events that if this were to end today or tomorrow for us, that is now part of your DNA, you know, and you'll have it and live it, and
you can remember every second of the day.
And it'll be there, yeah, it'll be there forever.
I started out being as a field engineer, work on the equipment so they can keep driving and worry about the camera, and wanted to go out and chase. It's kind of a weird way to get David to take with him.
Huge power flash.
So we were on 149th, and we started out, I think, around 10, and we just kind of zigzagged our way back. I remember David getting out, Cody, and they were filming. David was talking about, you know, this happened all over again. That house is gone, that one's gone, that one's gone. And
that's a large tornado. It's going to be 1/8 of a mile wide, a few hundred yards wide. Winds in there well over 150 miles per hour. Now going from an EF2 to possibly an EF3 tornado. That's going to be a deadly tornado.
Finally, we stopped at, I think it was Telephone Road, just south of 4th Street. We were up on a hill, and you can see the tornado coming across from behind the trees.
It's about ready to cross Western here from the southwest. You can take our stream. It's right in front of us.
One of the things I noticed is I didn't hear freight trains. You might hear it up underneath it, but it sounded like being at Niagara Falls. Just a lot of wind and a lot of rain. And we made our way back over to the 12th Street Bridge and more.
Holy Jesus.
Sat there and watched it go through. From that distance, it really didn't look like a tornado. It just looks like a big wall of rain.
And it's about ready to cross I-35 in Moore, looking off to my south at this monster, at this absolutely killer tornado.
It went across the highway, and I'm thinking, those poor people going across, you know, driving down the highway, not even knowing. I remember asking David, I said, should we go back and help him? He's like, no, we can't.
That was very similar to May 3rd, 1999. It's uncanny how all that started coming back to us, you know, and what, 14 years later?
Yeah, every storm we chase, I mean, we have a strategic plan, and if you don't, you don't get lucky and see a tornado. I mean, there is definitely a process, and like you said, we learn from our mistakes, and definitely that day traffic was in the back of our minds being an issue. But
we adjusted our chasing strategy based on what happened to us in the previous Moore tornado, the F5 that came through in '99, and so this time, you know, we weren't going to get caught behind everything. This time we got out ahead of it and positioned ourselves right where I thought the path of the tornado would go, just north of us, okay? So we did that, and we watched it form. We watched it come down to the west, and I think your original question was, you know, what were you thinking when this thing first came down? And I'm like, you know what? It's big, it's starting off big, and it's getting bigger, it's growing. This is going to be a bad one. And I think I started reporting back, you know, hey, look out, this thing's getting bigger, it's going to be a bad one, it's moving right over a populated area, and then it did, quickly, became a large tornado, turned into an F5.
The air is full of debris. I don't know, we're actually getting hit by debris here. This is a violent, deadly tornado, Gary. Please take cover if you're in the path of this thing.
yeah, we knew we needed to be east of the river, and we needed to stay south of the damage path so we didn't get caught in the debris. School's letting out.
Here it is.
At that point, we were looking at landmarks and things that would potentially get hit, and that was when emotionally you began to feel the devastation that's about to take place, and you just wish that everyone, you know, knew exactly what to do and where to go. You just can't shout it out loud enough in those moments.
You know, at that point, we're wishing we could do something to stop it, but there's nothing we can do. The most we can do and the best thing we can do is report on it, and to try and give accurate reports of where it is, and also to try and give very passionate reports as to how bad this is going to be. I mean, if you've ever noticed anything about the way I come on and do my reports, I try to be as straightforward about it as I can. If it's nothing to get excited about, I'm not going to hype it up, and you don't hear my voice going up. But when it is big like that, I'm doing everything I can. I mean, I pretty much wear my emotions on my sleeve, like, if you could say, but I was trying to stress as much as I could that, hey, this is serious, okay? This is as bad as it gets. You got to take shelter if you live in this area or this area.
Yeah, we don't want to cry wolf, but, you know, sometimes you don't know what the outcome is going to be. It would be better to be safe than sorry.
Right.
May 20th, you know, it still hurt. I remember I got the Sooner, I did a stand-up, the tornado crosses behind me, and I go a little farther, and I had my engineer with me and my photographer, and I go a little farther east, and you know, I'd seen all these events, and I've seen them, and whether it's in the studio or in the field and all that, but I still had to, you know, pull over, and I got out, and I was like, hey, great job, guys. I mean, it was horrible, and I walked off, took about a 30-yard walk off in the middle of nowhere, and just kind of.
That's when it hits.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
We just did it again. We just did it again.
Yeah. It's like, because when you're in the moment and you're chasing it, or
it's crazy.
I'm looking at it on radar, you
Yeah.
know what's happening, but it's
Yeah.
almost like that flood of what actually happened doesn't hit you till later, because you're just in the heart of it, in the moment of it.
I mean, I think about some of the chases, you know, May 3rd, I mean, May 10th, 2010, May 24th, my gosh, 2011, all these other big days.
Sure.
When I knew things were happening that were horrible in front of me, I'm seeing some horrible things in the field, and all that kind of comes forward sometimes. I think it's part of the passion. It's,
Absolutely.
You know, we love it. We love weather. We hate what weather can do, but that's another part of the emotional part of this. You know, we love, absolutely. I mean, the fact that it's a big physics equation running from the ground
nerding
up.
out about the science itself.
Everything that's going on around
Right.
you. And that is so amazing, and there's so much we understand, but there are things we still don't understand. You know, you've got 5 storms. Why is storm number 3 producing a tornado, and the 4 others are not doing anything? And they're spinning all day. Well, I don't know. Why is that storm 20 miles north not producing a tornado? I don't know, but it's not. But it looks like it should, but this one is. So there's things that we still don't know, but I think that's part of the whole that draws us in is still the unknowns, and there always will be unknowns. You know, the emotional part of trying to explain, because you're so amazed at what Mother Nature is doing. It's uncontrollable. Nothing can control this, contain it. You can't stop it. So we just have to figure out, here's where it is. Here's what we think the possibilities are of what it's going to do, where it's going to be, and how it's going to get there, is the unique and exciting part to us. But then at the same time, that's that side of your brain. Then the other side is, how horrible is this? This is so bad. I mean, it's changing lives. We've got debris in the air. We know what's happening.
And you also have those images from past events that you know how
So,
bad it can be.
You know, it's just a blender of nuttiness that's going on, and I try to control it as much as I can. And it's, you know, we all deal with stuff differently. Maybe I say weird stuff because that's how I deal with it. Getting grandma out of the casino, I don't think that's a relief valve. But I'm just, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just part of the DNA, but it changes you, as you know.
Every tornado season leaves a unique mark on Oklahoma and the experts who cover it.
Up next, how the storms our weather team covered this spring will shape us moving forward.
We've had such active spring. Some years are really active, some years are really quiet. This year was definitely forecasted to be an active year, and look what we've got, what we had. And I saw you more than I saw my family, and
Same.
Cassie, and Justin,
Same.
and Andrew.
Yeah.
And that's the way it goes sometimes.
But somehow we managed to stomp through it. What a year, crazy.
You think back to so many events, just going back and looking at some of the stats, the latest count now up to 104 tornadoes. And some of them like, oh my goodness, yes, that was such a big event. That was such a big day. That tornado, wow. But there's been so many.
And the most violent tornadoes were southwest Oklahoma, 2 unofficial EF5s.
Right.
Okay, well that changes things. And then what was weird about this year is we had, some years you have a bunch of tornadoes that just don't hit towns. They hit homes, they hit people in rural areas, and but this year we had more towns being hit, you know, whether that was our eastern Oklahoma friends, Barnesdall, or you know, Miami, or down south, our viewing area, Sulphur, and very close to Holdenville.
We know the tornado that went through Barnesdall. That's where I went to school till the 4th grade. I went to school there because we had a big ranch in Bartlesville, and I went to school at Barnesdale. Some call it Barnesdale. We've always called it Barnesdall. So the heck with it. It's Barnesdall to me. Yeah, the whole south side of town's gone. The other one is Sulphur. Sulphur used to be my old stomping grounds when I was in high school. And when I got out of high school, I rodeoed with a friend of mine in Sulphur, and basically just lived in Sulphur and covered every square inch of it. And then to go over there and see Old Town completely gone, I mean, that was like, oh my gosh. The place gets hit that I went to in the 4th grade. Old Town gets wiped out in Sulphur, the place where I run around during high school. Hopefully Wynnewood don't get wiped out because that's where I graduated high school, so hopefully Wynnewood don't get hit. But so that really stood out this year.
Last year was pretty crazy, but this year it really didn't start until the month of May, you know, the big stuff, but when it started, man, it started.
So you always have to prepare yourself for seeing something big, and that's what happened a few times this year. I was out in Cordell, we were out in the storm, kind of a minimal risk type day. You know, we had a tornado that formed, and it formed at the wrong place at the right time, and it actually hit Cordell. Luckily, there weren't any injuries or deaths, but it did a lot of damage. Luckily, we were there, and we were all over that one.
One thing that stuck out to me this year is multiple storms, and it started with that huge tornado that didn't hit anything.
Before, David.
Wow, 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 wow.
That was a very, very strong, violent EF5 tornado.
Look at that. It went up and it went, I'm not going north. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go east. Now it's going east again. I'm telling you, these things are alive and breathing, eating, and then they die. Well, we got to get this thing to die. This is a strong to violent tornado now.
I've seen 3 storms do this year, and I haven't seen that before. Me and Lacey were talking about this.
It was making a beeline, and then it
Right.
turned all the way around.
So that tornado set, and it was coming, and it was moving, and then as it started to weaken and die, it went back up and kind of made a curly Q with it.
And on radar, that was probably the most significant tornado presentation I've ever seen on radar.
You know, it's kind of like, why? And you know, from the scientist part of it, like, is it because there was such maybe a strong rear flank downdraft crashing it? Or the, you know, when the occlusion was happening, something else is going on in the environment up there that it's actually drawing that back? Was it outrunning the mezzo and the mezzo was pulling it back, or vice versa? And so, yeah, them are kind of some of the questions, you know, in small talk that all the weather nerds talk about, you know. And when I say weather nerds, I mean me and Lacey and David.
It's anticyclonic, so
spinning.
We've had storms that moved in different directions. This tornado is spinning in the opposite direction.
Yes.
The anticyclonic tornado in southwestern Oklahoma. How many tornadoes this year were spinning backwards? Several.
Yeah,
One
several.
large, violent one.
Yeah.
How many moved and retrograded? How many went in circles? I mean, we had some of the most erratic movement of storms, not just to mention the number of storms, and all such a unique and destructive way.
David has a saying that everything happens at Highway 81. It either dies or blows up at Highway 81. And there's a lot of truth to that, or at least, you know, what appears to be coincidental truth to that.
And we had the Custer City storm that, you know, formed on the dry line, and it worked its way east. You know, I got in front of just a monster wedge. They issued a tornado emergency for Custer City, and that was a big, powerful tornado. Luckily, it missed Custer City, but we were all over that one.
And whatever's trying to spin up, it's going to try and spin up right to our southeast, we think. There's a tree down in the road. Look at that tree.
We were tracking a large tornado out in Custer County that was ripping trees out of the ground.
Oh, good grief.
We actually ran through probably 3 or 4 pretty good sized trees that were already down on the road.
See if I can once again go through this without getting flat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good grief.
We were out just south of El Reno, and I start seeing power flashes.
5 power flashes right in front of us, another one thick.
And I was like, God, it's got to be straight line winds. And Lacey was going, Hank, them are like 90-mile-an-hour winds.
That is coming right into Union City. Hank Brown is right there on Highway 81. Cassie, as you query some of this, Hank, we are clearing winds over 90 miles per hour.
And then winds hit us or whatever, we move. I see a couple more power flashes, and I hear Val say, oh man, there's a big funnel.
Is that a funnel? Look, it's a funnel straight ahead of us. Funnel.
Less than a mile from me, right to my east. Right to my east. I'm coming up on the path. Hang on, I'm getting a clear shot. Oh my, this is a big tornado, Lacey. Take a look at it. There's the tornado right there.
And I turn and look, and there is this beautiful white funnel 3/4 of the way to the ground that sits down at night, and we can see it without lightning or anything. It was, and we pulled in and sat, and we probably watched that thing for like 3 to 5 minutes, which is unheard of.
And that is the tornado right now. It is 9:36. You're seeing it live on News 9. That is a very dangerous tornado, okay? It's very dangerous.
And Jeremy and Val, they had great video. Brandon was right there with it. I can hear something, but I don't know what it is.
There were a couple of times throughout the day that I felt like there were some weird things going on with the truck.
I can tell that somebody's talking, like not trying to go out over the air.
I was just driving along trying to get ahead of the storm, and all of a sudden the back end just shot to the right.
I hear Justin say, "Hey, Val, are you there?"
It's almost like the back wheels had locked up or something. And then we just started going around. And so all I can remember doing is grabbing that steering wheel and just holding on tight, and I was, okay, here we go.
Justin says something about, well, we think Val had a wreck.
And we went completely all the way around, did a 360. Well, we hit that center wall with the left front part of the vehicle, and then that tire kind of climbed up that wall and tipped us over on the passenger side. Going through one of those trees caused something to break on the truck. We don't know exactly what it was, but it never drove the same after that. And I will say this, and everybody that asks me, I just tell them God was with us. God was watching over us that night.
The days following were a challenge, just mentally, emotionally, for me at least, and just knowing that we are backed up by so many people praying and thinking about us and making sure that we're okay was just so wonderful.
Tornado on the ground, tornado on the ground. It's a big one, guys. Look at that.
The Altus, multiple vortex. I mean, Medusa,
The wicked,
octopus.
evil looking.
Crazy.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
1690.
Look at the motion, guys. Look at the violent motion.
Video-wise, that was like, okay, that's basically hell on earth.
Does it get any scarier looking than that?
Okay, so let's have a plan here. You got a
I've got a plan.
You got a plan? You know, we were so close to the mezzo, and as we saw aspects of the formation of that tornado that were something we have never seen before, and it was incredible, just the multiple vortices that were just spinning around.
Oh my God! It didn't really look like it was going to do much.
It's getting violent.
And then within 5 to 10 minutes, it just got its act together. A few minutes later, it produced a big tornado, and it just got bigger and bigger.
And our trackers were, we had that thing surrounded, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, at least it's rural. Obviously we had, homes were completely flattened and lost and removed from the earth.
We're seeing debris, guys, seeing debris. It's hitting a house or a barn. Look at that.
But man, if that's, goes through Duke or goes through Altus, it's so much worse.
It's tearing it up. I mean, it already hit a barn that was right there.
As it went across the farmhouse, I could hear David talking. He said, "Val, can you get closer to it?" And it was just so funny because, literally, the multiple vortices were just like right in front of us, right across the barbed wire fence, basically.
Boom, boom, boom. All right, let's go back to Val.
I said, we're close enough.
And the whole time I'm thinking, Val, what's our escape route? What's your plan? I really need to know your plan.
When I got it, I'll tell you. When I come up with it, I'll tell you.
All 3 trackers, we have it circled, we're slicing and dicing this thing, and I'm just like,
Some of the most wicked looking tornado appendages you've ever seen in your life.
yeah, it was, and for a second, I wish that I could have just taken myself off the wall and put myself
In the field?
in the field. There was a couple events like that this year. I was like, okay.
Let's go to Tom. Look at the horizontal tube right there.
Completely parallel
Wow.
to the ground.
Wow, streamwise vorticity out the left side of it. Go ahead, Tom, give us an update.
I get asked a lot, do you miss it?
Yeah.
Clearly I do. I miss it. I mean, it's what I grew up doing. I began chasing in high school. I lied to my parents. I'm gonna go to Billy's house, and I was out in El Reno chasing a, supercell. People, you miss it? Like, yeah, but I chased from the wall. And so I feel like that's what we do. It's not the same. You're not getting a sunburn.
Sure.
But I feel like some days I get really into it, and I'm like, oh, hang on a second. I have to kind of rein it back in a little bit because I know if I was in the field, I'd be like, are you kidding me?
But anyone who's ever been up close to a tornado or an Oklahoma supercell knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You can't not do that.
No, you can't. You can't. It's hard because you're amazed, but then the switch, we flip it.
Right.
And now bad things are happening.
Now
and
it's down to business.
You've gone from how incredible is this till I hate this.
Right.
I hate what it's doing.
And then there are times that it's not destructive anymore. Now it's okay. And sometimes that's a big part of what we do is to tell people, now it's okay.
It's fine.
This thing, I know your phones went off, but guess what?
Yeah.
You're gonna survive this one. This one is not horrible.
The Storms That Shape Us has been presented by Comfort Works.